Hey guys, welcome to a surprise Saturday afternoon episode here at 410 Sports Talk. We're excited to get into some NFL and more than anything Ravens news, but news that's going around the NFL that could definitely concern your Ravens. We're excited to get into all of it. So we're gonna do that right here.
Whoa, turn that down.
Nah, it is okay. I sound good, don't I?
Oh, you sound wonderful. I need to hear you twice.
But so yeah, I'm excited to get into it, talk all things Ravens. But I think before we get into the news around Cap Casualties and stuff like that, which is going to be the meat of the show, Glenn, why don't you start us off with talking about these Ravens proposed, John Harbaugh proposed rules that are once again being proposed. I'm excited about.
Yeah, so the first thing is I think the Ravens have been kind of trying to get this through for the last couple of years. Is the Ravens really want to add a sky judge that can make in-game obvious calls. They could overturn any obvious and clear bad calls, a much quicker process rather than have the referee go over to the booth and put the headphones on and look at a little Microsoft Surface or whatever they look at. Just make it quicker. Have a guy up in the booth with access to the Sky Judge cameras and make the call quicker to move the game along at a faster pace. There's too many stops in the NFL with challenges that are, when they're clear and obvious, we don't need to have the white hat go put on the goggles or put on and look at this little screen inside the hood. Just make it quicker. I mean, I've been asking for this in pretty much all sports. If we can quicken and speed up the challenge process, why not do it? I mean, it just makes too much sense. And with technology, I mean, we have a Sky Judge camera that can pretty much go wherever it needs to be and get almost any angle. So why not speed up the process? Why do the show of it and have the white hat go put the guy? It just doesn't make sense. So I'm hopeful that finally this year they can make that happen. But they've been doing that. They've been trying to have this happen for a couple of years now, and it hasn't gone through.
I
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like you agree that it needs to happen already. I think 9 times out of 10, us at home, we know the call before it's actually made, right? Like, yeah. Or, whatever the challenge is, whether it's going to be upheld or overturned or anything confirmed and things like that. So, yeah, I think it makes all the sense in the world. Use the technology and things like that that's available to you. So I'm totally for it. Absolutely. Now, this next rule, really unorthodox when you hear it, but also extremely intriguing when you think about it. So, Glenn, why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, so it's called the spot and choose rule. And basically it's a modification to the current overtime rules, taking out the impact of the coin toss. So basically they're going to still have a coin toss, but instead of determining, just determining first possession, what it's going to do is it's going to determine who gets to choose where the ball is placed. So whoever wins the coin toss can then choose where the team starts. So whether it's the 20-yard line or whatever, and then the other team gets to choose whether they start defense or offense. So if I win the toss, I say I want the ball to be placed on the opponent's 20-yard line, and then the other team can decide if they want to start offense or defense. And as far as I know, there's 2 versions of this proposal. Is that right, Jimmy?
Yeah, I believe that there are 2 versions of this proposal.
Yeah, one is going to be.
Oh, right, with the 7 minutes, and one is a 10 minute.
Is that the only 2 options?
I believe so.
Okay, so I think that the biggest thing is it's taking out the impact of winning the coin toss because.
It's tricky, man. Yeah, strategically, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it is a little tricky. Hang on, let me just pull it up to make sure I get it. Oh my goodness, my computer.
No, take your time. I was just gonna say that, yeah, just like Glenn said, it's
definitely.
Oh, go ahead.
So, I'm sorry. So Team A will pick the spot on the field. So
yep.
So they'll say the opponent's
the winner of the toss, right?
Yeah, the winner of the toss picks just the spot of the field. So he'll say the 35-yard line. Then the other team gets to choose whether they want to play offense or defense. So they either choose offense and try and drive the 65 yards for a touchdown, or they'll choose to play defense and try and prevent the other team from driving those 65 yards and scoring the touchdown, because it's still going to be the touchdown ends the game. So team A, whoever wins the coin toss, isn't going to pick the opposing's 1 yard line, because then team B would just say, all right, we'll start on offense. And we only got to go 1 yard and end the game. So it makes it a decision to be made there a little bit interesting. Now, and it's not always better in this scenario to have the ball first, because if you can say you choose the 20-yard line as the starting, the other team may go, all right, we'll make you go 80. We'll decide to play defense, because then if we stop you from even getting a first down and you're forced to punt, now we have a much more advantageous field position, and we only need a field goal to end the game. So it's definitely it's a change, and I'm not so sure, just because of usually the reluctance to any change. I would be surprised to see this go through. Because, I mean, they couldn't get the Sky Judds to go through for a couple of years, and that seems like a no-brainer, and it's quite obvious. I'm not sure who would even have an opposing view to that, and that took years. And I still don't know for sure if it's going to get past this year, although I'm expecting it to, and I hope it will. So I don't anticipate this move to be made, because they're just so resistant to change.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're asking what, 3/4 of the league, 3/4 of geezers to change.
Yeah, exactly. And it says that the Ravens will reportedly be offering 2 proposals. One's a sudden death, so the first team to score wins within 10 minutes of the game clock, and the other would keep the game going as normal for 7 minutes and 30 seconds with no sudden death component. So the first proposal is a 10 minutes sudden death overtime. First team to score wins. Boom, it's over. The other is saying we're playing 7.5 minutes, regardless of what happens during those 7.5 minutes. And at the end of those 7.5, whoever has the lead is going to win. And if no team has the lead, it ends in a tie. I'm not a big fan of ties. I hate ties. I hate ties in all sports. I don't like them in hockey. I don't like them in soccer. And I certainly don't like them in the NFL. I'm not a big fan of the 7.5, no sudden death, and if it ends in a tie, so be it, because I just don't want to see any ties. But at the same time, I understand the reluctance to have a sudden death, because if I like the fact of both teams' offenses seeing the field. So I'm kind of torn on where do you fall on this, Jimmy?
Yeah, this is tricky. I totally get the what you're saying, because I hate the fact that, as much as I'm not a Patrick Mahomes guy and definitely not a Tom Brady guy. The fact that, was it 3 years ago now, that they lost that AFC Championship game in overtime. The Patriots just won the coin toss, and Pat never even got the ball.
Yeah.
So, to me, I would like each team to be given a chance. But either way, I think that if I had to pick, I don't want to see a tie. So
right.
I guess the lesser of the two evils would be the sudden death.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand the point of hey, who cares that Pat didn't have a chance to play? That's his football is a team sport. So if your defense isn't good enough to stop the other offense, then you don't deserve to get on the field offensively. And I understand that point too. So I'm kind of torn on this, but basically I'll say anything to avoid ties, I'm in favor of. And anything to make it as fair as possible to take the impact out of a coin flip, because I don't like the game deciding on a coin flip either. So I'd really like how college does it. And I wouldn't mind seeing a modified version of the way college does. College gives each team at least one possession starting from the opponent's 25 and see what happens. Pretty much, overtime one is both teams get one opportunity from the opposing 25, and whatever happens, happens. Whether you kick a field goal, score a touchdown, don't get anything out of it. I kind of am in favor of that. It does, because it includes all elements. It brings in your offense, your defense, and very important on your special teams. Because if you're starting at the 25 and you say you end up getting sacked or whatever, and ends up fourth and 15 from the 30, you got to make that 47-yard field goal to at least get 3 points on the board and force the other team to at least get that. So I wouldn't mind seeing a modified version of the college overtime rules, but I don't think we're going to get there anytime soon. And I'd be surprised, honestly, if this is even enforced.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think we're a long way away, based on the fact that, just like you said, people are reluctant to change, and the specific demographic that are owners of the NFL, based on their age, I don't think they're big proponents of change.
No.
So,
no,
definitely going to be an interesting one moving forward. But I'm excited to get into a few of these other topics here as well, Glenn. I know that, like I said earlier, the meat of the show, we're going to really dig into some tweets and reactions to those tweets and the fallout or the things that could proceed following them as far as cap casualties and things go. But I just want to talk briefly about, let's talk about Orlando Brown. And, let's give an update. How are you feeling right now about his scenario? Where he's at right now. I know we've kind of gone back and forth. I think I kind of came out the gate a little stronger in saying that for sure the Ravens are going to move him because I don't think Eric DeCosta will be able to say no to the right deal because he's a wheeler and dealer and loves the draft. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned, I think that you were more initially in the camp that like, look, we got this window, we got this opportunity, like let's go all in with the best talent that we have. But it's interesting. I think that you kind of came over to the fact that most likely the trade is happening as tweets came out and news came out and things like that. And I've started to come back to, I think the reality of the situation is the longer it takes, I think the likelihood lowers that, goes down that a deal will get done. Now I could be wrong. Maybe the pressure and as inventory starts to decrease, maybe his value starts to increase, right? So I could be wrong, but where are you right now and you're thinking about Orlando Brown and what have you heard?
Well, the one thing that the recent tweet said that the Orlando Brown update is that most teams have inquired or who have inquired about the young O-lineman have said that Baltimore is asking for a day one pick. So they want a first round pick. And I think that doesn't really come as a surprise to us. It's nice to hear because I certainly think he deserves, or the Ravens deserve, a first-round pick in compensation for him. And honestly, when I look around the league at all the teams that are in cap troubles, a lot of them, or some of them, have a pretty sizable left tackle contract on their books, and some of them could get out from underneath that contract by cutting their guy. But you don't want to cut your star left tackle or your consistent left tackle without a plan in place to replace him. Well, Orlando Brown, at least for this year, would be quite a cheap replacement. You're going to have to give up some draft capital to get him. But as far as your cap number goes, it could be a nice cheap replacement for your left tackle. So I think a deal is no doubt going to get done because while the first tweet came out and I said, well, maybe you could kind of mend the fence. You could talk to him, let him know, hey, if you want to play left tackle, we understand you're not going to be able to do that here, but put on a nice show, maybe win a Super Bowl or at least have a pretty darn good season and then go get that money and play that position elsewhere in the future. But I think when he reiterated, doubled down on that tweet, he's posting clips of quotes from his father. I don't think there's any chance that you can convince him to play right tackle here. And why would you want to even have to, beg a guy to want to be here? It just doesn't seem like a Ravens type of move. So I'm assuming that they eventually do move the guy. And I'm hoping that there's a bidding war and that's what's taking so long. That there's multiple teams that they're letting compete for the right to have Orlando Brown and that the price is only going to go up. I mean, I see, and we're going to get into this list. There's a couple guys out there that are costing their team a lot of money that Orlando would be a much cheaper option for.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's such an interesting thing where I agree with you. I think I've said this out of the jump that like you're in a tough spot to try and get a guy to buy in. Like, why would you want to try and sell a guy on being here and being in a championship culture if he doesn't want to be here? Right. So, that's the last thing that you want. And if you can get proper compensation for him, go for it. But for some reason, I feel like, I guess where I think they're at right now is a wait and see because it's such a rare year. The cap situation is going to be what it is. And like you said, I'm not specifically referring to his deal this year, but what I mean is that other guys are going to get cut. That could be surprises. That could be wanting to take a 1-year deal. That could be around what Orlando's deal is worth, maybe less, right? Because he's in the 4th year. Do you have in front of you what his hit is this year?
Orlando's?
Yeah.
I can pull it up in a sec. Yeah, it wouldn't take too long.
Yeah, because I wonder, if teams are gauging based on the talent that could potentially be out there, okay, we could get this guy for this 1 year, or we could, give up some draft capital and then get Orlando Brown. So I wonder if a little bit of that analysis is happening as well.
His cap number this year is 3.6.
So maybe not. I thought it was going to be higher than that. I don't think
he's just a 3rd round pick. So
right. I don't think you can get any left tackle.
No, not even close.
That's as good as him.
or his rookie deal. I mean,
right. So definitely going to be an interesting an interesting scenario and situation to follow. I think that we will. I guess you're right, Glenn. If I had to lean one way, I think that we will get a day one pick, but I am starting to come back to the possibility that they're just going to plug him in there and say, look, last year deal, go out and get it, play for Super Bowl contender. So I'm kind of waffling right now, but I do feel like if I had to pick, there will be a deal that gets done.
Yeah, no, and Adam 70, there's no doubt this trade gets done before the draft. If it doesn't get done before the draft, then he's not going anywhere, in my opinion. You don't make trades for picks, which is what he's likely going to get back for the following year. You definitely try and get him this year, especially a team that's so ready to win. And just a shout out to a couple. Hey, Tanya, what's going on?
Yeah,
James. He's giving us a shout out from England. That's awesome that we help you feel closer to the team. We appreciate that. Chris Griffith, what's going on? My dog got spayed. Let's see, about 2 weeks ago. So so I know you're paying there, but she's back to her fighting weight and she's back to normal. But yeah, so and this story kind of leads into the Diana Rossini tweet and the discussion surrounding that. Diana Rossini, if you guys aren't aware, is an NFL insider, and she tweeted a few days ago that she just texted with an NFL coach about the upcoming cuts and what he expects. And he said, quote, "It's going to be a massacre next week all around the league." And there's really I guess that doesn't come as much of a surprise when you dive into the numbers and you start looking at the cap numbers around the league. There is, I don't know if I've ever seen this. I mean, obviously with the pandemic, this was a year that nobody saw coming. But there is so many teams in the red, Jimmy. And this isn't like other sports like baseball where you can just pay a bunch of money in luxury tax and afford to go over that cap. It's a hard cap here in the NFL. So you have to get under that number. And right now, I mean, I'm looking at the list of, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams that are in the red to start. And then there's a bunch of other teams that are barely outside of that, and they still have a whole draft class that they have to sign. They got depth they got to add to their roster. There's going to be injuries throughout training camp and preseason that you have to replace that still count against your cap. So this is a year in which, you know, it's unlike any other year we've seen, and that there's probably going to be a bunch of household names and big time names that are cut around the league next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of dig in a little deeper on the salary cap situation. I mean, it's insane because a lot of teams, you know, they sign their future contracts. A big portion of that, they sign their contracts with the idea that the cap will continue to move up, right? Some teams are more aggressive than others. Some teams are more optimistic than others. But, you know, at the beginning of the offseason, I didn't feel great about the Ravens situation. People say, oh, how do we only have 10 million? How do we only have 15 million? Whatever the numbers be. How do all these other teams have so much more money? You know, how is it that the Jaguars have $85 million in cap space? We have 10, like all these things. Well, let me just paint a picture for you. Like Glenn said, there's all these teams that are already in the red, but I want to provide you with some numbers here. Okay. The Saints are $62 million in the red. The Rams are $35 million in the red with $34 million in dead money. The Eagles are $34 million in the red. The Chiefs, $23 million. The Falcons, $20 million. The Packers, $11.5 million. The Bears, $7 million. The Lions, $7 million. And the Vikings, $3.5 million. So while some of those other numbers, like they don't sound terrible, $3.5 million, $6 million, $7 million, even $11 million, that's negative. Yeah. Right. That's what they're over the cap. That's not including guys that they want to retain. That's not including free agents. That's not including rookies. Yeah. Right. So, and where we are, let's see, we are currently, as it stands, this was posted 13 hours ago. We have $18.2 million in cap space, and only $11.7 million in dead money, which is pretty awesome. I think we're in a good,
about like 12th in the league. 10 or 12 in the league. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So yeah, we're 13th in the league in cap space. But what's encouraging is not just, because then you're like, wow, there's 12 teams that have more space. Yeah, but those 12 teams aren't ready to compete for Super Bowl right now. I mean, yeah, the Jaguars have an insane amount of money. You talk about the job that Urban Meyer got to inherit. The first overall pick, a bevy of picks in this loaded draft class, plus $85 million in cap space. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Florida's tax rules pretty good as far as
no state tax?
So, I mean, a pretty attractive job. My goodness. Yeah.
He knows Florida real well.
Yes, he's had lots of success in Florida. There's no doubt about it. This guy
he'll be gone in 3 years.
Yeah, because he'll probably have the headaches will come back.
Well, the Jag as soon as they start playing terrible.
Yeah, they'll probably get rid of him. But look, that's an awesome job. But look, the Jags aren't competing this year. I mean, as good as Trevor Lawrence is, and he's obviously going to be their pick, I don't think he's going to elevate them to Super Bowl contender. The Jets, same thing. The Patriots, same thing. The Redskins, the Washington football team had a good year last year, but who's their quarterback? We still don't know.
Heineke, baby.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I loved watching him play in the playoffs, I don't think, and judging by how much the extension was, I don't think they see him as the quarterback of the future. Now, the one team that's up there that is ahead of us, I think that it's, there's a few teams that are ready to compete. The Colts certainly are one of them. They still have $45 million in cap space, Jimmy. Mm-hmm. And they brought in, Carson Wentz. Now, the Eagles are paying the lump sum of that, and that's why their cap availability is so high.
And that's a little bit of window dressing, because next year they're going to absorb, Eagles are paying a lot of, right. The Eagles are paying, they're in a unique situation where it's really another 1 year window, right? Because they're going to be paying a lot of the Eagles are paying $34 million to Carson Wentz deal, but that's going to start shifting more and more. That ridiculous deal with 81 million or 81% of that contract guaranteed will be going more and more to the responsibility of the Colts.
Yeah. So even though the Ravens, they don't have a ton of space like the Jags and Jets, when I look at that top 13, I only see a couple competitors. I think you can argue the Colts are a competitor. Yep. The Chargers are probably a competitor because of their young quarterback, but even them, I still think they're behind us. And then the Cleveland Browns, who are just ahead of us with $20 million in cap space.
How crazy is that? All those years that they were on the top and that rollover money and things like that, and they still only have $22 million more than us, where we spend to the limit every year. That's impressive to me.
Yeah, well, they brought in some high-priced free agents. They brought in the right tackle, Jack Conklin, paid him, I think, to be the highest paid right tackle in the league. And then they extended Myles Garrett and gave him $100 million. So that money's going to add up somewhere, and it's going to do it quickly. But so my point is that there's teams ahead of us with more cap space, but only a few that can compete, which is something you can say this year may outweigh more, or may weigh more in the minds of free agents than any other year. Because as Warren Sharp said on the Pat McAfee show, when asked about the Diana Rossini tweets, he said, look, this is a year that could be unprecedented in the fact that players are likely going to have to take 1 year prove-it deals at a lower salary than they ever expected, and then look to hit free agency and hit that big payday next year when the cap is expected to rebound. So I think that it gives me more hope that the Ravens could make that big splash in free agency, or even retaining some of their guys that are free agents. Whereas before, in previous years, I would expect them to lose out to a bidding war in most of these. But this is a unique year, Jimmy. So we're going to get into a couple of these names on guys that could be cap casualties that the Ravens could look to jump on and possibly bring in to help. Yeah,
and really quickly before we jump there, I just want to double down on that Warren Sharp comment, because it got my ears ringing when I heard it. Is he said, I think in the last 4 years, the last 4 Super Bowl winners have spent under the league average. So they've spent under the league average in free agency. The last 4 Super Bowl winners. Look at the Bucs specifically and the Eagles. He talked about in 2017. Both of the free agencies prior to winning that Super Bowl, the majority of those guys were on 1 year deals. The only, of course, of the 15 free agency acquisitions that the Bucs made last year, only one was a multi-year deal, which was, of course, Tom Brady. All the other deals were 1 year deals. So he said this is an opportunity for savvy GMs that spend intelligently to get aggressive. Those 3 things: savvy GM, intelligent spender, and aggressive by nature, are all things that I've heard that we believe Eric DeCosta to be. Eric DeCosta's talked about his aggressive nature and maybe being a little more patient. But Glenn, I tell you what, if this is not a perfect storm for Eric DeCosta to take advantage of this offseason, I mean, I don't know what else is, right? This is an awesome opportunity for them. So yeah, with that being said, I'm excited to get into these names. Now, a lot of these are going to be speculations, but like she said, there's going to be a massacre. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, and also, just right before I do, there's also a couple opportunities for the Ravens to create more cap space through extensions. We're expecting Brandon Williams to get an extension for a couple years.
Based on his age and performance.
Yeah, he's still only 32 years old, I think it is, which is relatively young for the position he plays and the style in which he plays that position. So looking to minimize his $14.4 million cap number by just a couple-year extension, I think makes all the sense in the world. Calais Campbell, another possibility, although he's much older and further along in his career, so it would make it a little more difficult. I think Marcus Peters, they could do something with his deal because he's still young and they could extend that. So there's still opportunity to create more space in addition to the 18 that they already have. But let's get right into some of these names because you mentioned the cap nightmare that the Philadelphia Eagles are in. And I kind of feel bad for their head coach jumping into that absolute disaster because, I mean, they have a monster amount of dead money in after the Carson Wentz trade. And they got some pretty steep numbers on some guys that I think they could look to move. And the first of which is Derek Barnett. When I look at Derek Barnett, he's got a $10 million. They could potentially save $10 million by getting rid of Derek Barnett. And he's a guy that I think would be interesting for the Ravens to look at. I mean, he's 6'3", 260. So he doesn't necessarily carry the typical size that the Ravens look for from an edge guy, but he's just 25 years old. He's got a history of being able to get to the quarterback. He had 6.5 sacks in 2019, 5.5 last year. He did miss 3 games due to injury. So he's kind of similar to what the guys are that are leaving here, at least their production in Baltimore, in Judon and Unique. I think he might be a cheaper option than both of those guys. So he's certainly a candidate. I mean, when you look at 10 million and look at the nightmare they're in, let's see. Yeah, they're negative 33, almost 34 million. When you look at one guy could create almost over 10 million, I think he's certainly a candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to get him inside the Ravens organization, inside the castle, and get him on the team. I think he would be a great candidate. And did you mention the contract specifics for him? Is what, 10 million?
Yeah,
and
10 million.
Zero in dead money, right?
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, dead money is money. Did you end up looking up a further explanation of that?
It was exactly what you said.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just money that counts against your cap for the guy not to play for you. I mean, it's just basically they write that into the contract to discourage teams from cutting guys and to also make sure that they're compensated if the cut were to happen. So you'd be paying whatever the dead money is, you're paying that guy to not play for you that amount of money. So
yeah, and I think
want to do that.
Right. I think that's important to consider in this offseason too, because of the cap situation. Pretty much if you guys are interested in going and looking, I mean, we're obviously going to identify some names for you and that's what we're here for. But if you're ever bored and want to look up some teams that are in a tough situation and some potential fits for the Ravens, really, when you're looking at contract situations, anyone that has zero in the dead cap category and more than $3 million in the savings category is going to be looked at as a potential cap casualty this year.
Either that or a mass or an extension.
Right. Based on their age and performance and things like that. Certainly. And some that spectrum will shift this year more towards, I believe, cap casualties, even if they are younger because of the cap situation. So I don't think we're just going to be getting old vets that have got cut.
Right.
I don't think that's going to be the case. I think, like you said, Barnett is 25 years old. Man, that guy gets me excited. The idea of him coming in, with us potentially most likely losing Unique and Judon, him coming in here and being a playmaker that he is and starting to or continuing the tradition of edge guys on the outside. Now you said he's not like the ideal size, but he's 260 and he's not quite the height, but he's got some weight on him. He's a big boy.
Yeah, no doubt. And 260. Normally the Ravens look for an edge guy to be around 260, 265. So yeah, I mean, he would definitely. Now he's a little shorter than the typical. Usually trying around 6'5", 6'6", but still he gets it done at his size. There's no doubt about it. Another guy I want to talk about in the Eagles is Marquise Goodwin, the wide receiver, the speedster that made a lot of his fame in San Francisco previously. He's 31 years old. He's a little bit older guy. If they cut him, they would have zero dead money and they could save $4.2 million against the cap.
So, Glenn, if you had to guess, is he out the door?
Oh, he's a 100% out the door. I mean, Derek Barnett, there's arguments to be made to re-sign the guy, to extend him. I can't see a situation where the Eagles would, especially when you consider his issues with injuries in the past couple of years. And that's definitely got to be a concern with any team that brings him in. He hasn't played a full 16 since 2017. He's been absolutely banged up, but he's a guy that when he's healthy is a home run threat. He's a speedster that you just can't deny. And he'd be interesting because I guarantee the Ravens could get him for cheap. And we've mentioned that the Ravens, I think, need to bring a receiver in to add some veteran leadership to the room. I don't want to go into a season where Hollywood Brown is our most veteran receiver. I don't think that would make a whole lot of sense. So I would look at Marquise Goodwin as a guy that if he proves he's healthy, he could make some sense here in Baltimore.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there as well. And of course, they've already taken some other hits, or they've already cut some other guys that I think the Ravens will at least consider in it. Not that I want them, but the Ravens will kick the tires on him in Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Goodwin, certainly a more economical, I think, scenario for the Ravens. Now, before I know we have a long list of names that we're going to get through, and we're excited to do that. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about more than anything, because I know I'm going to get a reaction out of you. Jadeveon Clowney is already being linked to the Ravens.
Is he now?
Yes, I saw a report of that. And of course, Ravens 76 B more reminded me of that because he said Jadeveon Clowney will be cheap, but I did notice he's already being linked to the Ravens. So I agree with Adam 78. Forget Clowney. He is injury prone. However, one thing that rings that I hear in my mind when I think about injury is you talk about it all the time. The Ravens have a history of bringing in some beat up guys and helping them recover, keeping, with the strength and conditioning team, with the all grass fields, using the technology and then the science that they have. You just wonder, is there ever a year where he can make it through? And then at the end of the day, what would he cost? So I ask you, Glenn, this is how I pose the question. At what cost would you be okay with bringing Clowney in?
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. That's because, man, just as talent, just going by talent, I mean, there's not many more talented than him in the entire league. I mean, when he's on the field, he's a game wrecker. He's a game changer, a guy that you have to account for and game plan against, or he'll destroy your offense. And there's not many of those guys out there, Jimmy. So I do think he has a market. It's got to be just terrifying to look at him and think, how can you ever assume he's going to play a whole season? When you look at his history, he's played a 16-game season once, and that was in 2017.
And the scary thing for me is that the injuries are in different, it's not like, okay, so we have identified a knee that we need to work with. And it's a knee, then it's a core, then it's a hip, then it's a foot, then it's you know what I mean? So it's like, he's really made of glass to me, man.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is he just been stricken with bad luck, or is it something that he's doing, not preparing his body properly to make it through an entire season? That's a question we don't know. But I think that if I was a guy like Jadeveon Clowney, I'd be looking at, man, I want to go to a team that gives me the best chance at staying healthy while also being able to compete at the same time. And to me, there's no better team than the Ravens. They are fantastic about minimizing the amount of snaps on a guy's body. I mean, I just look at what Judon went through. Judon played 58% of the snaps. That's like nothing. I mean, you look at around the league, there's guys that play 90, 85% of their snaps, and that's got to take a toll on your body. I know as a player, you want to play as much as you can, but if you're playing and you're exhausted, I don't think you're being very effective. Rather than coming in and being able to bring fresh legs into the game because you're being cycled in throughout, I think you can put up better numbers and a better performance while playing less snaps. And then also you look at the all grass fields throughout, every practice facility, the best facilities in the world. I think it makes a lot of sense for a guy like Clowney to want to come to Baltimore. Now, if the Ravens want him, that's a different story. I think talent wise, it'd be a no brainer, but man, how could you ever count on him? I think the only way you bring him in, Jimmy, is if it's an incentive laden deal and you tie those incentives to play time and not even necessarily production. I think it's obvious if he's on the field, he's going to produce. It's just, can you get the guy on the field? But he's a guy, man, that would be awfully tempting if he's willing to take an incentive laden deal for the Ravens to bring it. I think it would be, man, it would be exciting, man, because when that guy is healthy, Jimmy, is there many better than him?
No, I mean, and that's the thing is that all you got to do is turn on the tape. That's all you got to do. You can say he's never had a double-digit sack year and this, that, and the other. But on the plays that he's on the field, just turn on the tape. Yeah. I mean, he's just a different player. Like you said, he's a game wrecker. He's a difference maker. So certainly he's definitely, those images and those highlights definitely keep his intrigue up. And obviously his athletic floor is already better than 90% of the NFL. Even probably when he's banged up. So definitely an interesting one for me. And you know what the crazy thing is, the incentives to me wouldn't even be based around sacks, Pro Bowl, stuff like that. Playing time, like availability percentage. That's it, man. Because if you're available, I know you're going to make plays. So it's just about being available. Right. And like you said, being in a system where Wink's guys rotate in and out so much, it gives them an opportunity to come in and be fresh. So definitely something I think that we'll kick the tires on later on, and we'll revisit as things move down the road. But also he won't count against the compensatory formula because he's a free agent.
Yeah, that definitely weighs a lot in Baltimore. Now I want to get back to some of these other teams.
Sorry for the aside there.
No, that's fine. His name was popping up a lot, and he's certainly an interesting guy. But when you look at the cap numbers, no team is in worse shape than the New Orleans Saints. Almost 62 million in the red, nearly double the second worst team in the Rams at 35. I mean, the Saints are in such trouble that it's really hard to look at. And when you consider the fact that I think, well, how much are they going to get from Drew Brees? I mean, because he's retired, right? He's going out the door. He had a $12 million cap hit. So we can expect that to come off, right? Because right now it's still being counted against him on the site I'm looking at. So even if that comes off, you're still at nearly 50 million in dead cap or in the red as far as the cap. So I think this is definitely a team that is going to look to make some moves. And I look at
Glenn, and I actually think that 12 million is with the retirement calc because they already adjusted his contract. Technically, he would, if he was still on the team this year, they've restructured his contract. So he would already take the minimum as far as salary. So I think that 12 million is already calculated because his hit would have been much higher than 12 if he was continuing to play next year. But they've already structured traditionally before the year end. If they know a guy's retiring, they'll restructure to like pay him the minimum, right? Like they're not cutting him, but they know he's going to walk out the door. But I think that's so
this 12 million is just, that's going to count against him. And even though he's gone.
Right. I'm 90% sure.
Yeah, because I see they did void his 22. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's either way. It's out the door. Right.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
That's absolutely brutal. So they need to do a lot of work. So they're going to have to make some hard decisions. I mean, they're going to have to, man, I'm looking around. They're going to have to cut or extend. Even if they extend, I mean, I don't know how you can create so much space. And then it's not like Taysom. Look, so they got Taysom Hill, but that dude's got a almost $16.2 million cap hit.
So is he gone, you think? What's his dead money?
No, he's their quarterback. I mean, his dead money will be over 11 million. So he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So here's what I look at as the most obvious ones. Ryan Ramczyk. I don't know I think that they would have liked to extend him, but they could save 11 million in cap money with zero dead penalty.
And what position does he play, Glenn?
He plays right tackle. And that guy would look absolutely spectacular here in Baltimore. He's one of the better right tackles in the league. And I don't know how you got to cut good players because look, the only other option is Marshawn Lattimore, the talented corner. I don't see, man, because he would save 10.2 and have no dead money. But are you really going to cut your two fantastic guys that are just exiting their rookie deals? I feel like you got to extend one of them. If I had to extend one, I'd probably extend Lattimore because you're already paying Terron Armstead a bunch of money to play left tackle. So are you going to pay two tackles and then let your star young cornerback walk and go to looks like he was tweeting something about Cleveland. I think he's from Cleveland. You gonna let him go play for the Browns? I don't know about that. So I think that Ramczyk could be a prime candidate to be cut, unfortunately for him. And
if you think about Taysom, if he really is their quarterback next year, well, he's going to run the ball so much anyway. We talk about Lamar mitigating the offensive line woes in certain scenarios because he's able to escape. Not that Taysom is Lamar. He's not. But the fact that their game will be dependent on him also running, maybe like you said, they're more likely to say, all right, we can go a little lighter on some positions on the offensive line because because Taysom's going to be taken off so much, right? So yeah, I agree with you. I don't think there's any way Lattimore hits the street.
Man, so Ryan Ramczyk in Baltimore at just 27 years old would be incredible. That guy, yeah, I mean, he would be a perfect replacement and a guy that wouldn't well, he's going to cost a little bit of money. So yeah, I don't know.
But also remember though, Glenn, that like what Warren Sharp said, aggressive, financially, smart or intelligent, and then and savvy. He could come in because these players are going to be incentivized by the following year. They're hoping that it's not just a bump, the normal bump. They're hoping it recovers and this thing bounces back hard, right?
And I expect it to as well.
So maybe these guys are saying, like you said, look, you want to be on tape. You want to be in the national televised games. You want to be in the playoffs. You want to be in the Super Bowl. So if I'm him, I'm only looking at a handful of teams, and yeah, maybe I'm taking a 1-year deal, $7 million.
Yeah, why not? Go to a good team.
Because that exposure makes you more money later on, right? It's all formula at the end of the day.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, so he's definitely an option because they got to do something. I don't know how they're going to do it. I can't wait to see the juggling that they do to get under that number because, I mean, I think Quan Alexander's definitely gone. He's a $1 million cap hit with no dead money. He wouldn't help really here in Baltimore. He plays linebacker. I think they've invested in that position enough with draft picks and with LJ Fort. But other than those three guys, there's just not a lot of opportunity to create space. So I think, I mean, I would be surprised, but not necessarily shocked to see all three of them gone.
Yeah.
And then them end up with none of those guys, which is crazy because that was such a talented draft class when they got Lattimore and they got Ramczyk. I can't remember who else they got. They had like three guys that really hit. I think the free safety, Williams, I want to say. But yeah.
The kid out of Utah.
Is that who it is? Yeah. So that would be surprising to see them, but they may have to make some hard decisions as tough as it might be.
And the one thing I will say, let's see, who was it that said there's no way Lattimore walks?
I mean, I agree
Camino Kush said there's no way Lattimore walks, and I get it, but everything is on the table this year. You're over $60 million in the red. That's just to get you flush. So then you can retain some sort of guys. You can pay your rookies, and you can maybe go after any sort of free. Like, it's just insane the scenario that they're in. It's just brutal, right?
Yeah. No, it's rough, man. I would not want to be a Saints fan, especially with Drew Brees leaving. It could be.
They're gonna eat some W's down there with old JW, Jameis Winston, baby.
Yeah, I wonder who gets the start there. You think Jameson?
Well, Jameis is a free agent, so they gotta sign him.
Yeah, I guess Taysom's the only one though, because they paid him a lot of money. You can't pay him that much money and not start him. So yeah, he's gonna be the starter there. But let's move on to another team. This one's gonna be interesting because the Kansas City Chiefs, they're gonna want to try and compete every year, and this is the first year that Pat Mahomes deal is starting to carry a high cap hit number. And right now they're almost 23 in the red. And when you look at their cap situation, there's not a ton of names that really jump out at you as obvious cuts where they could get out from underneath the contract. I think that they need to do something about the Frank Clark deal. He carries a $25.8 million cap hit as a D end. That is just insane to me. I mean, I agree that he's a player that when he's healthy, he's a good player. He's quick off the edge. He had 6 sacks last year, 8 the year before. That's not necessarily what you want to see out of a guy who's costing your team 25.8 against the cap. He's under contract through 2023. So it's not like this is the last year of his deal, but I don't know what they're going to do with that deal. They can't cut him because he would cost them 38 in dead money. So that's not even an option. So what are they going to do to create space? They got to do something. They can't do anything with the Pat Mahomes deal. That's too fresh. And that doesn't make any sense. So to me, I know it may seem surprising and it would be surprising around the league, but Tyrann Mathieu, they could create $14.8 million in cap space, only incur 4.9 in dead money. I know he's a star player for them. He's a guy that makes plays in many different ways on defense. He's a guy that is aggressive and instinctual at the line of scrimmage. He can cover in the back end. He can man up on your tight end. I mean, this guy is a Swiss Army knife and a talented guy. But, Jimmy, who else could they use to create that space other than Ty? I mean, Eric Fisher's a guy that they could look at. But, man, do you want to lessen the offensive line after what you saw Pat Mahomes go through in the Super Bowl? He's your left tackle. He missed that game. Well, I'd certainly want him back if I was Pat Mahomes. So I don't know if you want to do that. So, Jimmy, what do you think about Tyrann Mathieu being gone?
Yeah, I think it's intriguing. It's very intriguing because we have two good corners, but man, he'd be an upgrade from Chuck Clark, and I love Chuck Clark.
Yeah,
he's a Raven, but Tyrann Mathieu is just different, right? He's kind of what we're missing, and it would allow Deshaun Elliott to go in there and just play instinctively and go in and hit some guys playing the box and things like that. So yeah, and just so you guys understand the way that we're formulating this, Glenn gave that explanation, but really we're looking at, for example, with the Chiefs, the likelihood of a guy being cut based on his contract situation. Just like Glenn said, yeah, Frank Clark is a much higher hit, but he incurs so much dead money. They would lose money by cutting him. Yeah. So it wouldn't make financial sense for them to do so. And I think he still has 2 years left on his deal, I think is what we saw before we hopped on here. So, I mean, how many years can you extend a guy out before he's,
he's already 30.
Right. Absolutely.
So I don't think you want to do that. I think that now I do agree that he's 28. So he'll be 31 when his contract
expires.
So
how many more years do you want to push out? You know what I mean? And the only way that you extend a guy, guys, just so you know, you have to give him more guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're either else would he agree to it?
Right, exactly. So are you guaranteeing 1, 3, or 8 years? He's getting more money is what it means for him.
Now, I do think that they could extend Tyrann Mathieu because this is the final year of his deal, and they could lessen his impact to the cap this year. He's almost $20 million against the cap. So I think that's definitely a possibility. But when I hear massacre from Danielle, is it Danielle? No, Diana
Rossini, yeah.
And Warren Sharp echoed those comments and said that he's hearing the same things. I'm predicting some shockers, and he would certainly be one. Now, I wouldn't be stunned at all to see him sign an extension. He's just 29 years old. I could see him signing a 3-year extension and lessening that number, but you can't make money go away. And these guys aren't paying. Right. They're not playing for less.
Right. That's what I was about to say. And how much lower can you drive down his contract in all actuality, right? Like how much lower is he going to go than $14 million per annum, right?
Right. So, and they need a lot of space. So, and I think Damian Williams is an obvious cut. They could save 2.1 on him. There's some guys out there that they could cut. Derek Nottie, they could cut him, and that could help 2.1. But none of this is a big chunk, and they need a big chunk, in my opinion, to come off the books. And the only other options are like linemen, and I don't know if you want to cut linemen after what you saw in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's crazy to think because, like you said, Glenn, the contract is just starting to ramp up with Mahomes. But in all actuality, this is just the 5th year of his rookie deal. This is not even the worst of it.
No, next year it gets worse. So if you want to extend, Tyrann Mathieu, well, next year it's going to be even tighter. So.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. But you mentioned a guy from the Bears, Jimbo, and Kamino Kush talks about tight ends. And I think this guy, he might be in the plans for the Ravens. Who's that?
Yeah, and that's Jimmy Graham. And I think a couple of years ago, wasn't he somebody that was, the news was kind of percolating about Jimmy Graham coming to Baltimore. Mm-hmm. But now it seems to be that he's on his way out because, let's see, their cap situation is
$7 million in the red.
Yeah, so there's $7 million in the red with no quarterback.
Yeah.
So you have no quarterback and you're negative. That's
not a good sign.
Yeah, great job, guys. So I'll say that. So with Jimmy Graham, they would save $7 million. He's a $10 million cap hit. They would incur $3 million in dead money, $7 million in savings. And I think that Jimmy isn't going to get on the market. So what that means to me is that. My question to you going to be if Jimmy Graham to make the same amount of money he was going to make this year, all you got to do is say, hey, Jimmy, here's $7 million to come play with us for 1 year.
Man.
Right. So
that would be awesome.
Right. So like to me, that's a well-spent $7 million. And I think that in all honesty, it's not going to take that much.
Yeah, he's 35 years old. He's an old guy, for NFL terms.
So I think you go in and say, hey Jimmy, here's 4. You get 3 from the Bears. You're making $7 million as a 35-year-old tight end who doesn't like blocking.
No, which doesn't spell, that doesn't make me scream, bring him in as a Raven when I hear the blocking portion. But here's why I think he's a perfect candidate to be added to the Ravens this year. He played in all 16 games in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. And last year he played in 15 of 16 games. So he's proven that he's been healthy. And he's played in 15 of the 16 games in every season of his career except for 2015 when he played in 11. So he's been healthy his entire career. And here's another thing he's been his entire career, a monster in the red zone. Even last year, with just 50 catches, he had 8 touchdowns on a team that had a horrible quarterback, as you mentioned, in Trubisky and Nick Foles at times. This guy is an absolute red zone threat. You mentioned, I know you like former basketball players, and it's obvious why, because they're natural red zone threats. They know how to box out. They know how to go up and get the 50-50 balls because they're used to rebounding, and that's what you do. You go get the ball at its highest point and snatch it out of the air. So this guy is an instant red zone threat opposite Marquise and Mark Andrews. That would be a nightmare for teams to have to deal with him and Mark Andrews in the red zone. Whew, that would be tough. And as you mentioned, this guy has wanted to play on a championship team for a long time.
Since he left the Saints.
Yeah, this guy wants to compete for a Super Bowl. He sees this is the end of his career. And why not go to a team that plays, that's ready to play that's ready to win right now, and it plays and playing a tight end friendly offense and a quarterback who loves targeting his tight ends. Where else can he go where he knows he's going to be, where the tight ends are going to be the center of the offense, not the receivers.
Right.
This would be a dream for a guy like Jimmy Graham. And yeah, so he makes a lot of sense for them to cut. Look, they clear $7 million. They're $7 million in the red. So he makes all the sense in the world. And unless they somehow pull off a Deshaun Watson trade or some miracle, I don't think that they're looking at this as a year that they're going to compete for a Super Bowl. So why keep a guy who's 35 years old when they're not close? So he makes all the sense in the world to come to Baltimore.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Ing Raven in the comments. We appreciate it. So we agree with you. He'd be a nice pickup. I think that, once again, think about the scenario and think about what Warren Sharp said. I just keep reiterating it because it makes me think, it screams Eric DeCosta. And before we go down this list, I kind of want to go into this rabbit hole a little bit, Glenn. So, he said spending intelligently, aggressive, and savvy GMs are going to be able to dominate this offseason, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is my question to you. Eric DeCosta, we believe, is all of those things, right? I firmly believe that Eric DeCosta is top 3 GM in the NFL. I think that we have the best front office in the NFL. That could be me being biased, but I think Eric has been the most well-trained, has the most experience. He's cut his teeth from the very bottom. He's been trained by one of the very best in Ozzie Newsome. So all that being said, if he is not able to do that, right? If he's not able to, just like Warren Sharp said, to change our team's fortunes with these 1-year economical, team-friendly, but also high-impact players that are going to push us over the top, and barring injury, but I'm saying at least on paper in the offseason, if he's not able to do that, is it more about Eric DeCosta not being who we think he is, or do you get a little concerned, at least offensively speaking, thinking, man, maybe our offensive style is starting to impact free agency's decisions to play here?
Well, the only position I feel like would ever be impacted by, they would ever impact a free agent would be a wide receiver, because, what offensive lineman wouldn't want to play in Baltimore? They all like run blocking more than pass blocking. Well, where else can you run the ball more than Baltimore? There's no other place. As a tight end, what other offense is more tight end centric than the Baltimore Ravens? So as a tight end, I would want to come here. As a running back, man, where else would I want to run the ball than the best running team in the history of sports? I'd probably want to run the ball there. So the only spot I could see it negatively impacting is receiver. And then we went down the list of receivers. There's 4 spots guaranteed next year with Boykin, Marquise, Prochet, and Duvernay. Then we got the 2 futures guys and Deion Kane and Ben Victor, right? So there's not a whole lot of opportunity, even if you are rubbed the wrong way. So yeah, there is a possibility that with the recent tweets from the receivers with the statistics. When you look at the passing game for a receiver, you don't get a ton of targets. So I could see it impacting those guys. But every other position, I think it flips, and it's a bonus to come here. If I'm a tight end, yeah, I'd go there over most teams. Running back over any team, lineman over any team. So while it may scare off some receivers, that's okay in my opinion, because it makes those other positions really want to come here.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's definitely going to be really interesting to see. And like I said, I keep reiterating that, but it got me so excited to hear him talk about the type of GM that's going to go after there and get it. Cause I don't think it's going to be a 1 year GM or first year GM unless he's a phenom. Look, Eric's only technically in his third year GMing,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But he's been doing it and being paid like a GM for 16 years or whatever.
Well, paid like it certainly for a few. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, that's the thing is that Bisciotti's been paying him like a GM for years, right? Because he gets it. And so, so anyway, my point in saying all that is that I'm really excited as we go down this list to look at these guys and to think that Eric DeCosta has a chance to get them in. So anyway, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it is one thing that comes to my mind, and it is a concern in the back of my mind if things don't break well for us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, it is a concern from a receiver position. But look, I don't think that every receiver would be opposed to coming here. I mean, I think there's certain receivers out there that have different motivations, and winning should be one of them. And if you want to win, there's not many more winning organizations around the league than the Ravens. So I would still be excited. I think there's certain players that, yes, would be rubbed the wrong way on having lower targets. And I agree with that. But yeah, I think there's still some that would be interesting coming here. But moving on to another team, the Minnesota Vikings are in a tough time too. They have $3.5 million in the red. And when I look at their opportunities, what is this?
I'm doing the skull clap, baby. Skull.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
I'm just getting into it.
Yeah, the Vikings got some players that they're going to have to make hard decisions on as well. And one of them being a really, really talented guy in Harrison Smith. I look at Harrison Smith. He's always in the top 5 to 3 as far as rating wise as a safety. He's a very talented guy. But he's getting older, Jimmy. He's 32 years old. And he kind of reminds me of like an Eric Weddle type that we would bring in. You know, Eric Weddle was a guy that was always rated highly as a receiver, as a safety. And then things kind of ended on a sour note in San Diego at the time. And look, they could clear $10.2 million by cutting him. Now they could also extend the guy and lower their contract. But again, he's 32 years old. So that's going to be a tough decision. They also have another safety hitting the free agent market who is really highly rated and talented. Anthony, I'm blanking on his name, but we mentioned him before as a guy that the Ravens could look at, he was rated as the number 1 and number 3 safety in the league in 2018 and 2019. Had some injury issues last year.
What is his name?
Yeah, he had some injury issues. I think it's Harris, maybe. Or I know him and the safety from the Broncos have very similar name, and they're both very talented. But the Broncos, I believe, announced that they're going to franchise tag their guy. But yeah, so Harrison Smith, a guy who, again, very talented. I think he had 5 picks last year. He had 5 interceptions last year. He played in 95% of his team, or 96% of his team's defensive snaps. He's been healthy. He's played in 16 games in 17, 18. And 20, and played in 15 games in 2019. So a guy that's consistently healthy. He can tackle. He can play coverage. He's a really talented guy. So he would be a nice addition if the Vikings are ready to move on. You know, the big question is, are they going to extend him or are they going to cut him? Because I don't think there's any chance they play him at this current deal going into 2021.
Yeah, certainly. Just like I said before, guys, earlier in the video, if you look at any contract and it has, let's see. Think about the digits. How many? 6 zeros and then 2 more digits. So you're talking 8 digits. He's 10 and change $1 million in cap hit and 0 in dead money.
Yeah.
0. Guys, he's gone.
He's either gone or he's extended.
Right. He's gone or he's extended, but they're negative right now in the salary cap situation. So if he's extended, you're only extending him so long. And once again, you're guaranteeing a 32-year-old more money. So to me, I think he's out the door. My opinion. That's just my thought. But yeah, certainly, I guess the way I would say it is like Glenn said, it's a guarantee that you're either waxed, or you're getting an extension, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say that shout out to the Chargers for finding Eric Weddle for watching his daughter at halftime. I still can't believe that they did that.
Is that why he left?
Well, that's one of the reasons he was upset is because he watched his daughter's I think it was like her step squad or something like that. His like young daughter perform at halftime instead of being in the locker room, and they fined him for not being in the locker room with his team. Are you kidding me?
Especially a guy who's done that much for your
organization.
And
they sucked that year. Like they sucked. They were terrible. Yeah, so anyway, shout out to the Chargers for that great move. You guys are awesome.
Oh, the name I was looking for was Anthony Harris.
Yeah.
The other safety who was rated he was rated number 1 in 19 and number 3 in 18 and just had fantastic seasons both those years. So they could look to extend him and bring him back rather than the older what's his name? Harrison Smith. Yeah. So he is out of Notre Dame. I think somebody asked out of Notre Dame. Yeah, he's the Notre Dame safety. But yeah, so that's a possibility. And then another guy from Minnesota, they have to make a decision on their tackles because Riley Reif carries almost $15 million cap hit, and he would save 11.7 if they decide to move on from him. He's a little bit older guy. He's 33 years old. So they're going to have to make a decision with him. And I think Brian O'Neill is probably going to be I don't think he's a likely cut because he's a much younger. He's a right tackle for them. He's much younger. He's just 26. He's 6'6", 305. And they could save 2.5 against the cap in cutting him. But I think he's much more likely to be extended rather than cut because of his age, because he's a talented run blocker. This guy can run block his butt off, and he's not a slouch in pass blocking either. So something's going to have to get done, either Riley Reif or Brian O'Neill. I'm hopeful that it's Brian O'Neill and that they make a mistake and let him go, because I think the Ravens would be lucky to pick a guy up at that age and at that talent level. But I do think Riley Reif is the much more obvious cut. They could save a lot more money, and he's a lot older. So I do think they end up cutting the left tackle, and he wouldn't really fit here in Baltimore, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. It's going to be so interesting overall throughout the board because, like they said, based on all the reporting, guys, next week, look, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if your notifications aren't on, dang it, turn them on because it's going to be dropping. The names are going to be dropping like flies. Like Diana said, I don't think she was being hyperbolic when she said that it's going to be a massacre. This is just such a rare season. Who
would have ever thought that the NFL cap wouldn't skyrocket every year with the new contract, the new TV deals? It's insane. Who could have predicted this?
Yeah, and now did you see the NFL is trying to, for some of their TV deals, they're trying to get paid double what they got paid last year. So
I mean, it makes sense if people can't go to the games, which we don't know the scenario, the situation with people's attending the game. They're going to be at home with their TVs on. So I'm imagining ratings will go up because people can't go out to watch the games.
That's what you think. The Super Bowl was one of the lowest in a long time.
I think that could have been the teams in it. I mean, it's not like a huge.
We know what'll happen when Ravens flock. When the Ravens are in the Super Bowl, Ravens flock comes out, the viewings goes up. So NFL, remember that when there's a close call. Okay, you want your viewings? Get the Ravens in the Super Bowl. No, I'm totally kidding. But a couple people have commented on this. So Glenn, I kind of want to shift the conversation over to it because you and I had talked about doing this already on the show. Is the center conversation?
Yeah,
I'm happy that there are what does Greg Roman say? The word is plethora, but he says plethora. He definitely does not say the word correctly. But
maybe he's saying it correctly. Is it like mature? Is it mature or mature? I can never tell.
It's mature.
Okay, I've heard a lot of matures lately.
Yeah, same thing with idea. It's an idea, not an idea. There are no deers running around the woods with no eyes. Okay.
All right.
So there are a plethora of picks out there as far as free agent acquisitions that the Ravens can make at center. So Glenn, talk to me about those, and then let's talk about who we want, who we like. I think we have our eyes on the same guy, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tweet came out saying that the Ravens will prioritize the offensive line and could target Packers center Corey Linsley or Giants center Kevin Zeitler. And this was per Jamison Hensley of ESPN, who is now a lot more famous than he was a couple weeks ago, thanks to Matthew Judon. And it also said that another couple guys that the Ravens could be targeting is Patriots guard Joe Thuney and Jeff Zrebiec of The Athletic mentioned Falcons center Alex Mack as a potential target. So I know that's music to your ears. You've been wanting the Ravens to spend some draft capital or salary cap money towards the center position. You're done with the late round or undrafted picks being thrown at center and hoping that they pay off and they don't snap the ball over Lamar's head. So what are your thoughts on any of these guys, and who are you hopeful comes to Baltimore?
Yeah, so my number one is Lindsley out of Green Bay based on his age and performance.
Okay.
My number two is Alex Mack based on his experience, leadership, but he's only my number and his performance, but he's only my number two because if I'm not mistaken, he's the oldest of the crew.
Alex Mack?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's like 38.
Yeah, exactly. So he's old man winter. And I don't want us, just like we said before, I don't want us to get old and expensive like the Eagles. And that can happen real fast when Lamar's contract eventually gets done. Things start to balloon. We end up old and expensive. I don't want that to happen. So I like Lindsley for where he's at in his career. I think we can, based on, the circumstances, I think we can get him at a good deal. And I think he can really anchor the center that offensive line. And just thinking about this is one of the reasons, Glenn, that I say that it's possible that Orlando does stay around. Think about, so if you plug in Lindsley, right? Like mentally, say he's on our offensive line. Then you got Ronnie that comes back healthy. Then you got Bozeman, and then you got Orlando. And the only spot that you're really concerned about is right guard. That sounds awesome, right? So that to me, as far as like taking advantage of this year, it does really make me wonder about the Orlando thing. You know what I mean? But as far as the center conversation goes, Lindsley's my guy.
So Lindsley, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, he was the number one rated center in the league last year, so he's probably a target by a few teams, not just the Ravens. And as somebody pointed out, I must have misspoke and said that Kevin Zeitler was a center. He is definitely a guard. So him and Joe Thuney are the guards, and Mack and Lindsley are the centers. So you would prefer, if given the choice, them to go after a center guard.
Well, I think it's more of a glaring need. How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think Ben Powers showed himself, at least in a run blocking standpoint, to be more than sufficient. Now, if he can continue to develop and improve as a pass blocker, then he could end up solidifying himself as the right guard. But I wouldn't be surprised if they give shots to some of the young guys that they brought in as well in previous years. So I agree with you. I think center is the biggest need on the offensive line, and that is until Orlando Brown is moved, and then I think right tackle becomes that. But as of right now, I think center is the most important position. I think, I think the Ravens would like Macari to be that Swiss Army knife up and down the offensive line that can help out everywhere, because he's pretty much played everywhere on the line, rather than naming him the day one starter at center and hopeful he can carry you throughout the season in the playoffs. I think that they need to address center. The only question is, do they decide to do that through the draft or free agency? I think I would love Lindsley. I'm hopeful they can bring him in. I just feel like some team is going to outbid us for him,
right?
And because of the fact that he was so good last year. And I think Alex Mack, although he's older and he's had injury issues, I think he makes more sense,
more realistic.
Yeah, because of the fact that he's so much older, that his price tag has got to be so much smaller now. And I agree with Frank Duggins. Even if they do bring in an Alex Mack, I'm still hopeful that they draft a guy of the future. Yeah. And I'm hopeful that they do it with a guy who's a natural center instead of trying to turn him into one, because I'm done seeing snaps going over Lamar's head.
But based on that, what do you think about, so if you bring in Alex Mack and him bringing along a guy like Bredesen, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, has been no indication that the Ravens are willing to try him at center yet.
They ran some practice, and they were like doing the you could watch YouTube, the practice or whatever. They had some lines where they run him at center, but still nothing more than that. Bless you. Oh, just so you guys know, Glenn is a violent sneezer, so we appreciate you going on.
Come by naturally.
But the other thing I want to say is Josh Myers. What if they move Bozeman to center? Look, man, I'm done with that. Not because I've been wanting it to happen. I think Glenn and I both have been wanting them to do it. He was an All-American center in Alabama. It makes no sense to me, but they're so reluctant to do it that I'm done wishing. Not that I don't agree with you, Josh. I'm there.
Yeah, we've been there, but
right. Yeah.
They don't seem to be there. And let's be honest, he's shown to be a pretty darn good guard, and I love him when he's pulling. I mean, I think that's what they like about him, his mobility. pulling as a pulling guard and getting to the second level and taking out linebackers. I think they end up just they don't want to lessen the left guard to make him a center, but I agree. I've been wanting him to be there for a long, long time, but I don't know, whatever the Ravens see they don't like about him, whatever it might be, they
it's
obviously
interesting,
don't
right?
Yeah, it is interesting because it almost sounds, I don't know, it's hard to even hear of a moment where they even gave him an opportunity to try at center, but maybe it's stuff we haven't seen behind closed doors that rubbed them the wrong way about him. And that's possible. But yeah, I'm hopeful that the Ravens address the center position in some capacity. Whether that be, look, how would you be opposed to them spending, if there's a guy that's eligible, or that's if there's a guy at 28, what do we pick, 28 or 27? If there's a guy at 27 that makes sense from a talent standpoint, that's a center, what were your thoughts be on them drafting a center with their first pick? You'd be fine with that?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, obviously, I love edge. Like, and I think a couple of shows back, I talked about how throughout these years since we've had Lamar and we've had the podcast, I've been talking about interior offensive linemen as my number one priority, especially with the retirement of Yanda. But this is the first time where, to me, edge is a higher priority on that list over offensive line because of the exodus that is happening outside at edge. But if we take, I think based on where we're picking, I think that the top tier edge guys could be gone. Mm-hmm. While I think at 27, it's very safe to say the best center in the draft is going to be sitting there.
Yeah, and then the Ravens have to determine if that's a good enough value for the 27th pick.
Or if they can move back and he stays on the board and they can pick something up.
And then they can get more picks. Yeah. Yeah, that's I guess that remains to be seen. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Edge is the most important, but I wonder if when we expect Orlando to be moved, does that then become the number one concern, right tackle? Because I don't think we want to have Phillips out there.
Fluker out there again.
Yeah, no thanks. I mean, I guess if Fluker was fully healthy and he'd be okay as a stopgap, but Phillips, to me, I didn't see a ton from him to make me crazy excited about him being our starter at right tackle. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Another thing I wanted to bring up to you that I saw getting some steam, Jimmy, and I want to know your opinion on. I saw a report linking Juju Smith-Schuster. Apparently there was a couple of ESPN analysts that really liked the idea of Juju coming to the Baltimore Ravens. And let me just give my little take, and then I'll kick it to you. I do think from a skill set standpoint on the field, he makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, he's a tough guy. He's who I would consider a possession receiver, a guy that can make those tough catches and isn't scared to go over the middle. I think he's a really good blocker, a guy that really takes pride in his blocking, likes to lay people out in his blocking, which would be welcomed here in Baltimore. But the only problem is I think he's more interested in him than he is, I think he's more about being Juju than he is about being a Raven or a Steeler. I think that he's more concerned with himself than he is necessarily about team success. Now, I agree that, or I understand that when he is on the field, he wants to produce, and that I like that. But he's too much about the TikTok. He's too much about social media, and he's just too much about himself rather than the team. But I want to get your thoughts on Juju.
Yeah, so I lean that way as well. However, I've been thinking about this for a lot, and one thing to remember, it's funny that I'm saying this, but he's 24 years old. If I'm not mistaken, he was the youngest player in that draft.
Yep.
I think he was barely 20 or something ridiculous
Very
like that.
Man, yep.
And he's always been playful by nature. So maybe what I'm trying to say is that he has some runway in front of him to mature and to grow, into more of a team guy and less of a social media star. But I have to say, it doesn't help his case that all over social media, he's taking body shots by boxers and tug of war with tigers when I'd rather see videos of him in the weight room, right? Like, I understand you can have fun, but what's the best case scenario that comes out of body shots by professional boxers? What's the best case scenario?
Yeah, I don't even understand I don't get that drill, like what that does to make you a better football player.
Apparently you can break your ribs and they regenerate faster. No, I'm totally kidding. They regenerate double the speed of a normal man, like Dwight Schrute, right? Like,
yeah, I don't understand what you get out of that. I don't get what you get out of tug of war with a tiger. I think that it's just more look at me.
Yeah, that's the
which I'm not
overall.
if he just did that, it wouldn't be a big deal. But when you accompany that with the dancing on the logos and you accompany that, it's all those things that add up. If he just tweet, like if I just saw a video of Patrick Queen tug of war with I wouldn't be like, oh, I can't stand this guy. It's
right,
the
but it's
combination
an accumulation.
of things. Exactly. Yeah.
Right,
So
of all those things.
But I do agree with you in the fact that he could mature. Casino Life mentioned that as well. That at 23, there's no reason to expect him not to be able to mature as he gets older. And I agree with that. And I do think that if he was brought into Baltimore, John would have that conversation with him. Eric would have that conversation with him. The social media stuff before and after the game is not going to be accepted here. You can't be dancing on logos. And he probably learned his lesson the hard way last year in Cincinnati. But yeah, so I do think they bring in a veteran. I think I saw somebody mention his projected value is 15 million, which we don't really know if that's true, but that is the valuation that he's getting, and that's all we can go by. Because I do think the valuations are a little bit off this year, and people are kind of more confused than ever with the crazy year that it is. But even if he's 11 million, 12 million, even close to that, he would have to be awfully special for the Ravens to want to bring him in.
Certainly. And then he also only kind of halfway checks off that veteran box, right? Because he's
not so young as well. Yeah.
Right. That's so it's point. So certainly he's had moments where he's cut his teeth and been able to, show veteranship, but he's kind of failed in those categories.
Now I do like him. I don't know. I'm so torn on him because that game after the Browns game when he called them nameless gray faces and they're the same old Browns, he went out and balled and then was the only guy, he was kind of on the sideline after everyone else had left with Big Ben and who was the other guy they were there? I think it was Pouncey. And so he seems like a guy who his teammates would really like, with him, but they probably don't like the extra stuff, the added motivation he provides to the other team with his press conferences and his dancing and stuff. So,
and I also do wonder when you pay for him, just like somebody else said, like how much of that type of production can you get from a guy like Duvernay?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Duvernay guy. I think Duvernay, absolutely. Every time he touched the ball, he was impressive. I don't see anyone. I didn't see a scenario where he got the ball and he didn't make the most.
And
of
we
it,
regretted it. What I mean?
Or if we were like, man, I wish he would have done this. He could have probably gotten 10 more. No, he always seems to make the most of every play that we've seen him have the opportunity to do so. And as far as people in the chat are asking about Jalen Ferguson, I have no faith in Jalen Ferguson. If he becomes a rotational player that you can count on in scenarios, I'd be happy at this point. So I don't ever anticipate him becoming the sack daddy in the future. I think his sack daddy days left behind him in college. Yeah,
absolutely. I agree with you. I think his career is in jeopardy at this point. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what happens. Next week is going to be a huge week, Glenn. I mean, like Diana Rossini said, it's going to be an absolute massacre. So we will keep you guys up to date. We're going to have our live video on Tuesday at 7 p.m. And we'll go in as things change, and we'll have videos coming out as things change as well. But also go back and take a look at our video with Jason Pruitt, who is the draft expert, third most accurate draft expert in the country. And so make sure to go check it out. We had a show with him, which was awesome. Talks about,
and we're gonna have him back, guys. Once as the draft gets closer.
Right, absolutely. So keep all your questions coming, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
So, actually, hold on. Before we leave, I want to give a couple shout outs in the chat for everyone. Adam78, appreciate you always showing up. Camino Kush, active. We appreciate it. Let's see. Tanya, always here. Tanya Bowman, we appreciate you.
Did you say Adam78 already?
Yep, I believe so. I think I did. Harry Highland, Frank Duggins, appreciate you. Shout out to Ing Raven for jumping in the comment section and sharing his thoughts.
And the Zen master himself, Daniel Kunimoto.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So shout out to all you guys. We'll talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.